What's good, y'all? It's your boy Nino and your man D Hicks behind the camera from your morning show on Live 99. Let us know what you want to hear. 812-773-3071 or on our Facebook page, facebook.com/live999WJCB. And if you are an independent artist or entrepreneur, you want to get your music heard or your business some exposure here on Live 99, all you have to do is hit us up in our email at ninoincognito@gmail.com or at 999WJCB@gmail.com or directly through our website at live999WJCB.com with a clean MP3 version of your music and a brief description of your business. And if it's on point, we'll show you as much love as humanly possible. You could be our next independent artist or entrepreneur of the month. And if for those of you who don't know, here in Vanderburgh County, we have an election coming up, and I have one of the candidates for sheriff on the line with me, Deputy Noah Robinson. How you doing, Noah?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today.
Not a problem, not a problem. Now, how long are you were, according to your website, you were the deputy sheriff, or did I have that correct?
Well, I've been a deputy sheriff at the Vanderburgh County Sheriff's Office for over 21 years now, but at one point I was the chief deputy, the second in command, yes.
Chief deputy, all right. And you say that, how long you say you've been with the Sheriff's Department?
About 21 years.
About 21 years. And how long before you were, before you made the decision to actually run for sheriff? What made you decide to actually run for sheriff?
Well, I think that every sheriff deputy at one point in his career considers whether or not he or she would eventually want to run for sheriff. And so it's been something that I've been bouncing around in my head ever since I came on, not really giving any serious thought. I love the job so much. I enjoyed being out there on the road and driving around and getting to know people and helping people. And so becoming sheriff was never paramount on my mind. But when I made chief deputy, and about a year before I did, I started thinking more of long-term in terms of how I could really impact the agency and move it in a direction that I saw as being more positive. And so when I was promoted, my plan kind of crystallized, and I announced that I was going to run for sheriff.
All right. Now, for those of us that don't know, the election is coming up. It's May the 3rd, correct?
That's correct. The Democratic primary is May 3rd, the Republican primary as well, but I'm running as a Democrat, and so there'll be two Democratic contenders that will face off on May 3rd.
All right. Now, those that need to know, the best kind of voter is an informed voter. Now, for those that don't know, what are the primary duties of the sheriff versus being a deputy sheriff?
Well, the sheriff has the same duties and responsibilities as the deputy sheriff. The deputy sheriff enjoys all the powers and privileges that come from being the sheriff. The deputy sheriffs act on the sheriff's behalf. What that really means is that the sheriff has certain constitutional duties as well as regulatory and statutory duties required by law. And the deputies execute that on behalf of the sheriff. Those mostly include pursuing felons and misdemeanors, arresting people for various offenses, and the big one, maintaining the jail. That's the sheriff's responsibility. It's not the responsibility of the city police or the responsibility of the state police, but local jails are maintained by statute by the sheriff, and so that is one of the largest responsibilities that an elected sheriff and his confinement officers and sheriff deputies can have.
All right. Now, what separates you? Now, let's say the best kind of voter is an informed voter. What do you think separates you from your competition here to be elected for Vanderburgh County Sheriff?
Well, we both, you look at us on paper, we both are qualified to be sheriff. Both have long-serving members of the office. We both have risen to the ranks. But I think what separates me is I have a much more community-focused platform. And you can tell I believe what I say when it comes to community-based policing, because throughout my entire career, I have really focused on better interfacing with the community and the people that we serve. And so I started the Sheriff's Office Bicycle Patrol 10 years ago. I found a grant that paid for bicycles, and we put our sheriff deputies on bikes and had them out in our neighborhoods, getting to know the residents there. And I got us on Nextdoor, the social media app for neighborhoods. And so I started interfacing with our neighborhoods via that platform and getting to know our residents and pushing out special alerts and notifications to individual neighborhoods. And so really trying to improve the communication between the sheriff's office and the people that we serve. And so the next step that I want to do, if elected, is to move to a more neighborhood-centric method of policing. I want to put sheriff deputies, assign them to individual neighborhoods so that they get to know the people that they police, and that we build relationships with those individuals and attend their neighborhood meetings, and start capitalizing on what I call relationship-based policing, where we are actually truly knowing the people we police and building trust and improving recruitment in that way, earning the trust of young people, and doing a better job of representing law enforcement out there in the community.
And I'm glad you actually said that. I used to work with one of the other local radio stations here in town back in the day, and we were actually at a community initiative that we had in conjunction with the Evansville Police Department before Billy Bolin became chief, when he was assistant chief. And one of the suggestions that I made to him, this was back when the EPD were riding around in the black colored police cars and in the black uniforms, and I told him that I think it would be better if the police force put up a more friendly presence and more neighborhood friendly presence, instead of patrolling looking around like a SWAT force when they come into the neighborhoods. Because I remember the days of the officer friendly that used to patrol the neighborhoods, where everybody knew the local officer that would patrol the beat on foot and things like, I'm 47 years old right now. So back in the day, there were actually officers that would actually be in the neighborhoods that knew the residents.
We've gotten away from it, and I know why. I can understand why to a certain extent. It feels like the world has become a more dangerous place, and in many respects it has. We're seeing an increase in shootings. We know that police have a tough job out there to keep themselves safe and the community safe as well. But I've never subscribed to the notion that the police force should look like an occupying army. I think it's a good idea to remind our police and our sheriff deputies sometimes that we are a civilian law enforcement agency. We shouldn't be calling the people that we police civilians, because we ourselves are civilians. We are not military. And I've always been keen to draw a distinction between dressing like we're in the military versus dressing like a traditional police officer. And so in that regard, I do want the police to look the part of a civilian police officer. And so I don't go in for the Velcro and the tack vests. They have their place. And believe me, I want my officers protected when the circumstances require it. But for routine patrol, I want our officers looking approachable and like a traditional police officer, because I think that the tactical gear can be off-putting to some people and leave them thinking that they're actually being policed in a militarized zone versus a neighborhood. And so that's important to me. Image matters. People notice these kind of things. I want to make sure that we're putting the right foot forward.
Outstanding. Do you have a plan to try to increase diversity amongst the ranks in the sheriff's department? I said one of the other, complaints that some of the people in the neighborhood, when we had those community meetings were that the sheriff's department, and this was also including the EPD at the time, but also including the sheriff's department, it doesn't seem like the ranks represent the diversity of Evansville itself, especially on the south and southeast sides, of the city and of the county. Do you have any plans to try to increase diversity and recruitmentship, especially within the black and Hispanic and maybe even, Asian communities? Because we do have a growing Asian community here in Vanderburgh County. Is there any plan to increase the diversity on the sheriff's department in that area?
I don't view minority recruitment as something that we might want to do or should be doing. I view it as something that we have to do. And traditionally, we've done a pretty poor job of it. Our version of minority recruitment might be to slap a minority on a billboard and then check that EEOC box and say mission accomplished. And it's not. It doesn't matter. I don't think the public wants to hear, hey, we're trying to recruit minorities. They want to hear what you've actually accomplished. And so the proof is in your statistics. How many minorities do you have working for you? And of the 118 sheriff deputies we have right now, we only have 4 that are African American, and 2 of those are still on probation and were recently hired. So we're making some progress, but we have to do more. It has to be baked into the culture of the agency. And I'm afraid right now it's not an afterthought, but it's something more that the sheriff's office has looked at and is trying to actively do. But it's not part of the culture of the agency to recruit minorities. And when I say that is, we have to go and be in the minority community. And we have to be showing folks that we mean business. And what I mean by that is We have two African-American sheriff deputies right now that work for the sheriff's office. They're senior deputies. They're both supporting me, and I'm glad to have their support. I want to fully utilize that in terms of placing these sheriff deputies in uniform and having them attend events and youth groups that are in minority-occupied areas. And, the Fourth Ward has a higher concentration of African-American residents, and that's where we need to be recruiting from. That's our pool. And so I think when a young African-American male sees an African-American uniform, that's a clear indication that that's a viable career path to him or her. And we need to show those examples of successful black men and women in uniform so that the young people can see that that's a viable career option. And that's what I want to pursue. It takes more than just putting somebody on a billboard and sending out minority featured recruitment paraphernalia. It's got to be part of the culture of the agency. And that means recruiting in historically black colleges and youth groups and other organizations within the community that are historically black. We've got to be there interfacing and showing support to those organizations, and that's what I'm going to do. This won't happen overnight. We've got to meet people where they live and make the case that law enforcement is a viable career path. I'll tell you right now, some of the stuff you're seeing on YouTube from other police agencies, it doesn't do us any favors. We can be our own worst enemy when it comes to minority recruitment, because I don't think there's a whole lot of family members out there that might necessarily recommend law enforcement to their son or daughter, and I can't blame them when they see cops behaving badly on YouTube. And so it's my goal to make sure that our officers are out there and they are receiving the latest de-escalation and anti-bias training so that we are always seen as a paragon of fairness and impartiality, so that my agency doesn't have a bad name and therefore having a problem recruiting officers that want to work there, because no one would want to work for an agency that's got a bad reputation. So in order to recruit more minorities, we've got to get our own house in order, which it largely is, but there's room for improvement, and we've got to actually meet people where they live.
True, outstanding, all right. Now, what do you see as some of the major problems that need to be fixed within Vanderburgh County that the Sheriff's Department can tackle?
We have no shortage of societal ills and problems in Evansville, much like any community. And the Sheriff's Office is not equipped, nor should it be responsible for handling all these issues. Oftentimes we will get called to a scene of family dispute involving a young person, 16 or 17 years of age, and then we're asked to fix this problem that's been developing for 17 years, and no one individual or group could possibly bring that situation to a positive conclusion. But there are steps the Sheriff's Office can take to make sure that we're putting people on the right path. And so I view it as there's no silver bullet answer to fix all the issues that are going on in Evansville. But those areas that I have control over, I will have a positive impact. And it starts from making sure that the school resource deputies that we have assigned to the Evansville Schools Corporation have the tools that they need to be successful in their jobs. And that means more than just guarding schools, but actually mentoring and becoming familiar with our youth and being a resource for them and doing whatever possible to keep the youth out of juvenile court and on the right path to graduation. So I'm not content just to guard my schools. I want to actually be an active role in encouraging and mentoring our youth within those schools and catching kids before they go down a dark path. I'm not interested. I would love to stop a school shooting, believe me. I would much rather prevent a school shooting and save a youth from going down a dark path. But more commonly, is preventing kids from starting on that path of gang activity and drug abuse. And being in the schools and serving as a role model and being someone that a kid can approach and talk to when they're having a problem is a big step towards that. I realize we can't be 100% successful, and kids are going to matriculate out of school, and while I'll do everything possible to avoid the school-to-prison pipeline, I know that some of those kids are going to end up in jail one day. And if they do, I want that facility to be purpose-built to deal with substance abuse and mental health issues. I am not content to run a jail that is solely based on an incarceration model. I want to be a jail that has a strong treatment and rehabilitative component to it. And so I want to be in the business of providing support and fixing those individuals who are willing to make a change. And so that's why I support a jail expansion that is treatment-based, not just incarceration-based. And so being part of the community
is better than a pound of cure always.
Oh, you are absolutely right about that. I would much rather front-load it with prevention than back-load it with cure any day of the week. Absolutely.
And And one final question for you, Mr. Robinson. What is your stance on the decriminalization or / legalization of marijuana within Vanderburgh County or the state of Indiana as a whole?
I have a very strong belief that marijuana legalization is an idea whose time has come. Am I a fan of marijuana? No. Do I smoke it? No. Do I want my kids smoking it? Absolutely not. But I recognize that some people enjoy marijuana recreationally, and that those individuals don't deserve to be penalized any more than someone who enjoys alcohol. And quite frankly, I am tired of seeing folks conduct marijuana deals in back alleys and parking lots, getting into fights or worse over marijuana. And I'd rather have that marijuana out in the open under the bright lights of government regulation, taxed, and preventing some of these backroom deals that happen that so often result in violence to our youth. And so I favor marijuana legalization, and I will argue that as sheriff, but I also know my role as sheriff, and I'm in the executive branch. I don't make the law, I enforce the law. Well, I have some leeway. 2 years ago, I signed the draft order that stops sheriff deputies from arresting folks for minor misdemeanor offenses like marijuana. And so we stopped doing that 2 years ago, and our simple marijuana arrests plummeted to 0. And I'll continue that practice. I've been asked occasionally if I would continue to cite individuals for marijuana. And I will say this: I will look for any reason not to cite someone for possession of marijuana. But I, as a sheriff, don't have the authority to declare something legal or illegal. That's the job of the legislature. And so I know my role as sheriff. I think it's a slippery slope for a sheriff to be saying that this law will be followed and this law won't. So I know my role in that respect. And I hope folks would appreciate a sheriff that always follows the law. But that being said, I will use the platform of the sheriff's office in my own elected office to argue in favor of marijuana legalization.
All right. Now, the Democratic primary, you say, is coming up May the 3rd. Noah Robinson is running for the sheriff on that ticket. Is there anything that you would like the voters to know for the upcoming election about Noah Robinson?
I'm a man of my word, and I do what I say I'm going to do. And I feel passionately about various issues. They're all on my website, and NoahRobinsonforSheriff.com or just NoahForSheriff.com. Take a look at my platform and learn a little bit more about me. Like you said, an intelligent voter is an informed voter, and so I welcome anyone to check out my website and get with me, ask me questions. I like questions that I haven't anticipated. I like being held to account. I enjoy talking with folks. A big part of my campaign has been a grassroots door-knocking campaign. I have knocked on thousands of doors in the last year and a half. It's something I deeply enjoy. So hop on my website, shoot me a message on Facebook. I love talking to folks, and share your concerns with me. I want to be your sheriff, not just a sheriff.
All right, so if you want to find out anything else, you want to get more informed about Noah Robinson, his stance, his platform, his career, you can always check him out on the social media platforms, on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Got the Noah for Sheriff, and you can check out the information about the Vanderburgh County election coming up May the 3rd. Use your power to vote, stay informed, and vote wisely. Thank you for your time, Noah Robinson. Good luck in the upcoming election. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.